Chapter 6. The Presentation. The 43rd floor of Excalibur Tower housed the Round Table Room, a perfect circle of polished stonewood and gleaming technology where Arthur Pendragon's most important decisions were made. Dawn light filtered through smart glass windows that curved around two-thirds of the space, offering a panoramic view of CAMELOTROPOLIS awakening below. The remaining third of the wall featured a massive digital display currently showing the Excalibur Industries logo, a stylized sword embedded in a modern rendering of the city skyline. Bedivere Jackson, head of security, completed his final sweep of the room at precisely 6:45 a.m. His methodical inspection was more ritual than necessity. The Round Table Room was the most secure location in the building, accessible only by specific biometric clearance. Nevertheless, Bedivere was nothing if not thorough. His military background had instilled in him a respect for protocol that bordered on reverence. "Security check complete," he reported into his discreet earpiece. "The room is clear for Mr. Pendragon." As if summoned by his words, the private elevator doors slid open, and Arthur stepped out. Despite the early hour and the events of the previous night, he appeared immaculate in a tailored charcoal suit, his posture betraying no hint of fatigue or stress. Only those who knew him best would notice the slight tightness around his eyes, the barely perceptible pallor beneath his tan. "Morning, Bed," Arthur greeted him, using the familiar nickname few were permitted. "Any issues?" "None, sir. All systems optimal." Arthur nodded, setting his briefcase on the table. "The board members will begin arriving at 8. Kay should be here any minute to review the presentation. Ensure we're not disturbed until then." "Yes, sir." Bedivere hesitated, then added, "Sir, regarding last night's incident with Professor Ambrose." Arthur's expression remained carefully controlled. "The police are handling it. Let's focus on today's priorities." "Of course." Bedivere recognized the dismissal and moved toward the exit. At the door he paused. "Sir, I served with many leaders in my military career. None matched your vision or integrity. Whatever today brings, know that you have people who believe in what you're building here." The unexpected sentiment seemed to catch Arthur off guard. His composed facade briefly softened. "Thank you, Bed. That means more than you know." After Bedivere departed, Arthur moved to the windows, gazing out at his city. From this height, CAMELOTROPOLIS appeared orderly, its grid of streets and variegated architecture forming a cohesive whole. The morning light caught the waters of Lake Astolat to the east, turning them to liquid gold. Somewhere down there, police were investigating Merlin's death. Somewhere down there, Gwen was likely sitting in their penthouse, still waiting to discuss the envelope Merlin had given her, the one Arthur had been too shaken to open when he'd finally returned home after midnight. "The circle closes," Merlin had written on the envelope. "The king must find the Grail to heal the wasteland." Arthur's reflection stared back at him from the window, confident, successful, powerful. But superimposed over the cityscape, he could also see what others couldn't. The subtle tremor in his right hand, the faint sheen of sweat on his brow despite the perfectly climate-controlled room. The symptoms were becoming harder to hide. His contemplation was interrupted as the elevator doors opened again, admitting Kay Stewart. Unlike Arthur, Kay showed every sign of a sleepless night, his usually immaculate appearance slightly rumpled, dark circles prominent beneath his eyes. "The modified projections are ready," Kay announced without preamble, setting his tablet on the table. "Gaheris sent over the final data at 4 a.m. The results are, well, they're beyond anything we anticipated." Arthur turned from the window. "And Gaheris? How is he?" Kay's expression tightened, unstable. "I found him in the lab last night, clearly sleep-deprived and possibly self-medicating, but his work is solid. I had 2 other engineers verify the findings independently. We're asking too much of him. We're asking what's necessary." Kay's tone was matter-of-fact. "The Grail project is too important for sentimentality. If we succeed, Gaheris can have all the rest and rehabilitation he needs afterward." Arthur frowned, but didn't argue. Kay had always been the pragmatist to his idealist, a balance that had served Excalibur Industries well. Instead, he asked, "And our position with the board?" "Divided. Leodegrance, Ban and Pellinor support you unconditionally. Bedford and Travers are on the fence, but leaning our way. Morgan's faction, Cornwall, Nentries and Lot will oppose anything on principle." And Lady Igraine? Kay hesitated. Your mother keeps her own counsel, as always. Arthur nodded, unsurprised. Igraine Pendragon had been a silent power on the board since his father's death, rarely taking public positions, but wielding significant influence through private conversations. Her relationship with Arthur had always been complex, supportive of his vision for the company, yet distant on a personal level. The fact that she maintained cordial relations with both Arthur and Morgan despite the siblings' bitter rivalry spoke to her political acumen. The presentation is scheduled for 10, Kay continued. The Grail prototype will be moved to the demonstration area at 9:30 under triple security protocols. Gaheris will handle the technical explanation, and you'll close with the vision for implementation and social impact. Arthur picked up Kay's tablet, reviewing the finalized presentation. The technological breakthrough at the heart of the Grail project was presented in carefully framed language, revolutionary but explainable, world-changing but marketable. No mention was made of the anomalous behavior Gaheris had documented, the impossibilities the prototype seemed to defy. It's not the whole truth, Arthur said quietly. It's the truth the board can handle, Kay replied. The truth that will get us approval. Once we have that, we can explore the unexplainable aspects more thoroughly. Arthur set the tablet down and returned to the window. Below, the city continued waking. Traffic increasing, buildings lighting up, the rhythm of urban life accelerating toward the day's peak. His city. His responsibility. Have you considered, Kay said carefully, that the technology might be connected to your condition? Arthur's reflections stiffened. His health issues were known only to Kay, Gwen, and his private physician. The progressive symptoms had begun almost a year ago. Tremors, fatigue, occasional cognitive disorientation. Medical tests had revealed nothing conclusive. The best specialists baffled by the combination of symptoms that didn't fit any established diagnosis. The timing of the breakthrough and the progression of your symptoms can't be coincidental, Kay pressed. And now with Merlin's death and his cryptic messages. We're not going there, Arthur interrupted firmly. Today is about the technology and its potential to transform energy production globally. Nothing else. Before Kay could respond, Arthur's phone buzzed with a message. He glanced at it, then frowned. What is it? Kay asked. Lance, they've completed the preliminary analysis of Merlin's papers. Arthur's expression darkened. He says there's something I need to see immediately. Something about the Grail. The diner on Camlin Street had seen better decades. Its once chrome fixtures had dulled to a weary grey, the red vinyl booths patched with duct tape in places, the linoleum floor worn to ghostly pathways by countless shuffling feet. But the coffee was still strong enough to dissolve a spoon, and the location, wedged between the financial district and the old manufacturing zone, made it perfect for meetings where anonymity was preferred. Lynette Torres arrived 15 minutes early, selecting a booth with clear sightlines to both entrances. The cryptic text she'd received while at the Orkney Library had left her wary. Years of community organizing had taught her that information never came without an agenda attached. At precisely 10 a.m., a man slid into the booth across from her. He was perhaps 40, with an unremarkable face and the kind of business casual attire that suggested middle management. Only his eyes seemed distinctive, sharp, assessing, slightly mismatched in colour. Miss Torres, he said, not offering his name, thank you for coming. You claim to have information about Arthur Pendragon and the Round Table Initiative, she replied. I'm listening. The man smiled thinly. Direct. I appreciate that. He placed a manila envelope on the table between them. These are internal Excalibur Industries documents detailing the actual plans for Orkney Heights and 4 other neighbourhoods included in the Round Table Initiative. Lynette didn't touch the envelope. And you're sharing these out of civic duty? Let's say I believe in transparency. Mr. Pendragon's public promises don't align with what's happening behind closed doors. And you are. Someone who thinks you deserve to know who you're really dealing with. He pushed the envelope closer. The community clean-up projects, the library renovations, they're cosmetic. Phase 2 involves massive redevelopment that will price out current residents, regardless of what guarantees Pendragon made last night. Lynette studied him, trying to place his face, his manner. You work for Excalibur? I have access, he replied, neither confirming nor denying. Finally, she took the envelope, opening it to find what appeared to be official Excalibur Industries documents. Planning reports, financial projections, zoning applications. The letterhead and formatting looked legitimate, though she'd need time to verify the contents. Why me? She asked. Your blog has been critical of corporate-led development. You have credibility with community groups across the city, and you recently had direct contact with Arthur Pendragon himself. The man checked his watch, which makes your next move especially interesting. Lynette's eyes narrowed. What's happening at 10 o'clock? The Excalibur board is meeting to approve a revolutionary new technology, what they're calling the Grail Project. Clean energy that's too good to be true. His mismatched eyes held hers. The same company planning to displace thousands of low-income residents is positioning itself to control the global energy market. If these documents are genuine, they are. Then why not take them to the press? The man smiled again, a gesture that didn't reach his eyes. The press has corporate owners with their own agendas. But you speak directly to the people Pendragon claims to want to help. Your voice matters more. He stood to leave, then paused. One more thing. If you decide to use this information, you might want to look into the environmental testing data for the Orkney Heights groundwater. There's a reason Excalibur is so interested in that particular neighborhood. He placed a business card beside her coffee cup. When you're ready to know more. After he left, Lynette examined the plain white card. It contained only a phone number, no name, no company. She tucked it into her pocket alongside the envelope, her mind racing. The timing of this meeting, coming directly after Arthur's intervention at the library, couldn't be coincidental. She pulled out her phone, searching for information on the Grail project, but finding nothing beyond speculation on tech blogs about a major Excalibur announcement expected soon. Opening her own blog site, she began drafting a post about the previous night's events at the library, carefully omitting any mention of the envelope or her mysterious informant. As she wrote, a notification appeared, a news alert about the death of Emrys Merlin Ambrose, former professor and known associate of Arthur Pendragon, found in an abandoned warehouse under suspicious circumstances. Lynette stared at the screen, remembering something Martha Ector had said the previous night. There's more going on in this city than any of us understand. She closed the draft and opened a new document, typing a single title, The Web Behind CAMELOTROPOLIS. Then she began to map connections, starting with Arthur Pendragon at the center, adding lines to Excalibur Industries, the Round Table Initiative, the mysterious Grail Project, and now a dead professor with an Arthurian nickname. The pattern that emerged was still fragmentary, full of gaps and questions, but it suggested something larger than corporate politics or urban development, something that made her both uneasy and intrigued. She glanced again at the business card with its anonymous phone number. Not yet, she decided. First, she needed to verify these documents independently. In her experience, truth rarely came from a single source, especially one with mismatched eyes and no name. The morgue beneath CAMELOTROPOLIS General Hospital maintained a constant temperature of 36 degrees Fahrenheit. Cold enough to slow decomposition, but not so cold as to damage tissues needed for examination. Dr. Elaine Corbenick, chief medical examiner, preferred it this way. The slight discomfort kept her alert during procedures that often stretched through the night. The preliminary tox screen shows extremely high levels of an unidentified compound. She explained to Lance Dulac and Detective Bors, who stood on the opposite side of Merlin's body. Similar in structure to DMT, but with significant modifications. I've sent samples for more comprehensive analysis. Lance studied the pale form on the steel table. In death, Merlin looked smaller somehow, the chaotic energy that had animated his wiry frame now absent. The brilliant mind that had once revolutionized economic theory before descending into apparent madness was now just inert tissue waiting to be processed and catalogued. Cause of death? Lance asked. Blunt force trauma to the back of the skull. Dr. Corbenick indicated the wound with a gloved hand. Single blow, significant force. Likely occurred between 10 p.m. and midnight, though the cold conditions in the warehouse make time of death estimates less precise. Murder weapon? Something cylindrical, approximately 2 inches in diameter, metal or similarly dense material, not recovered at the scene. Lance nodded grimly. Any defensive wounds? None. No evidence of a struggle at all. He either didn't see the attack coming or knew his attacker and wasn't threatened. Detective Bors made a note in his pad. The scene was arranged to look like a robbery. Cash and valuables taken, space ransacked, but it was staged. The disruption was superficial, focused on areas visible from the entrance. "What about his papers?" Lance asked. Detective Walker was cataloguing them. "Still working on it," Bors replied. "He says it's complex material, equations, diagrams, what appear to be predictions or prophecies. Much of it concerns Excalibur Tower and something called the Grail." Lance's phone buzzed with an incoming call, the mayor's office. He excused himself, stepping into the corridor. "Gwen," he answered quietly. "Lance." Her voice was tense. "The envelope Merlin gave me, I've opened it. Arthur needs to see this immediately, but he's in pre-meeting preparations at Excalibur Tower." "What does it contain?" A brief hesitation. "Diagrams of the Grail project with annotations warning of catastrophic failure. Predictions about today specifically. Lance, Merlin believed Arthur's new technology could tear open something he called the Veil Between Worlds if activated at full capacity." Lance frowned. Merlin was brilliant but unstable. His predictions "have a way of coming true," she finished. "You know that as well as I do. Remember the market crash he forecast 3 years ago? The structural weakness he identified in the West Bridge before engineers found it?" "What do you want me to do?" "Get these documents to Arthur before the board presentation. I'd go myself, but I'm scheduled to appear at the Children's Hospital groundbreaking in 30 minutes. Her voice dropped lower. "Lance, please. Whatever was happening to Merlin, whatever he was seeing, he was killed for it. That can't be coincidence." Lance closed his eyes briefly, caught between professional obligation and personal loyalty. "I'll handle it." "Thank you." The relief in her voice was palpable. "I've scanned everything and sent it to your secure email. The original documents are in the safe at home." After ending the call, Lance stood motionless in the corridor, weighing his next move. Protocol dictated that Merlin's materials should be treated as evidence in an active homicide investigation, not delivered to civilian third parties. But Arthur wasn't just any civilian, and if Merlin's warnings concerned a potential public safety threat... His deliberation was interrupted by Detective Walker hurrying toward him, tablet in hand, his young face flushed with excitement or anxiety. "Commissioner, you need to see this," Percy said, thrusting the tablet forward. "I've been analyzing the professor's notes, and there's a recurring diagram, some kind of energy pattern he was tracking throughout the city." Lance examined the screen, seeing a map of CAMELOTROPOLIS overlaid with flowing lines that converged at several points, one of which was unmistakably Excalibur Tower. "He called them ley lines," Percy continued, "energy channels naturally occurring in the Earth. According to his notes, they've been growing stronger over the past year, coinciding with Arthur Pendragon's health issues and the development of the Grail technology." Lance looked up sharply. "Pendragon's health issues? That's not public information." Percy shifted uncomfortably. "The professor seemed to know about it anyway. He wrote that the king and the land are one, that Pendragon's condition and the city's infrastructure problems are connected. Failing water systems, power grid instabilities, the sinkholes in the East Quadrant. This is superstition, not evidence," Lance said, but without conviction. He'd known Merlin for years, had witnessed the man's uncanny insights defying rational explanation too many times to dismiss them entirely. "There's more," Percy said. "The professor predicted his own death. Look at this entry from 3 weeks ago." He scrolled to a page of handwritten text, circling a passage. "When the Grail nears completion, Morgan will send her champion to silence me. The witch cannot allow the truth to reach Arthur before the board convenes. The king must be warned that what flows beneath the city is awakening." Lance stared at the words, a chill running through him, despite the hospital's warmth. The text message he'd received at the crime scene flashed in his memory. The lady waits at the lake. Avalon rises while Camelot falls. Find the teacher before the witch does. "Sir?" Percy prompted. "What do you want to do with this information?" Lance made his decision. "Continue analyzing the materials. I need to deliver critical evidence to Mr. Pendragon before the Excalibur board meeting." At Percy's surprised expression, he added, "This is now a potential public safety matter. Detective Bors will oversee the remainder of the autopsy." As he strode toward the exit, Lance pulled out his phone to check Gwen's email, the uneasy feeling in his gut intensifying. Throughout his career, he'd relied on evidence, on facts, on the solid ground of provable reality. But now he found himself navigating something that felt increasingly like the terrain of myth, a world where coincidence carried meaning, where patterns emerged from chaos, where a brilliant madman's ravings might contain terrible truths. And at the center of it all stood Arthur Pendragon and whatever grail he'd discovered beneath his tower. In the basement laboratory of Excalibur Tower, Gaeris Wright made final calibrations to the Grail prototype. His movements were precise despite his exhaustion, guided by muscle memory and the artificial clarity provided by the Avalon in his system. The drug's effects were beginning to wane, however. He would need another dose before the presentation. The laboratory, a state-of-the-art facility that occupied the entire subsurface level of the tower, hummed with energy. Banks of computers monitored every aspect of the prototype's functioning, while specialized equipment measured outputs across multiple spectrums. At the center of it all stood the device itself. Still deceptively simple in appearance, the metal cylinder with its crystalline core now connected to a larger apparatus that would channel and distribute its energy during the demonstration. Gaeris glanced at the monitor displaying the prototype's current output levels. The numbers remained impossible, energy continuing to flow without diminishing, defying the most fundamental laws of thermodynamics. It was as if the device had established a connection to some external power source, though all instruments insisted it was completely self-contained. Final preparations proceeding on schedule? Gaeris startled at the voice, turning to find Morgan Fay standing in the laboratory doorway. Her presence was so unexpected that for a moment he wondered if he was hallucinating, a not uncommon side effect of Avalon when combined with sleep deprivation. "Miss Fay," he managed, his voice betraying his surprise. "This area is restricted to authorized personnel only." Morgan smiled, stepping fully into the lab. She wore a tailored black suit that exuded authority, her dark hair swept back from her face to reveal sharp cheekbones and penetrating eyes. "As a board member and major shareholder, I have clearance for all Excalibur facilities, Dr. Wright, especially when I'm concerned about a project consuming so much of our company's resources." Our company. The possessive sent a chill through Gaeris. Everyone knew the bitter rivalry between Morgan and her half-brother, her repeated attempts to wrest control of Excalibur Industries from Arthur's leadership. "The project details will be presented to the board at 10. Gaeris said carefully, "Mr. Pendragon has requested that all discussions be confined to the official presentation." Morgan moved closer to the prototype, studying it with unconcealed interest. "Remarkable," she murmured. "So much potential in such a small package." She turned to Gaeris. "You look unwell, Dr. Wright. The pressures of revolutionary science taking their toll?" Gaeris fought the urge to check his watch. If he didn't administer another dose of Avalon soon, the initial symptoms of withdrawal would begin. Sweating, tremors, anxiety spiraling into paranoia. He couldn't risk such a display during the presentation. "I'm fine," he lied, "just focused on the work." "Of course you are." Morgan's gaze was penetrating. "Mordred speaks highly of your dedication. He mentioned you've been experiencing some personal difficulties recently. Financial pressures, I believe." The casual reference to Mordred, combined with the allusion to his gambling debts, confirmed Gaeris's worst fears. This wasn't a coincidental visit. Morgan knew about his arrangement with Mordred, about the information he'd been providing on the Grail project. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said, the tremor in his voice betraying him. Morgan smiled again, the expression never reaching her eyes. "Loyalty is admirable, Dr. Wright, but sometimes our loyalties become confused. We think we're serving one purpose, when in fact we're serving another." She moved to the computer terminal, glancing at the readouts. "These energy signatures are fascinating, almost as if the device is drawing power from somewhere else, or somewhen else." Gaeris stared at her. "What do you know about it?" "More than you might imagine." Morgan reached into her pocket and removed a small vial of amber liquid, pharmaceutical-grade Avalon, identical to what Mordred had been supplying him. "Your next dose, I believe. The presentation is in less than an hour. You'll want to be at your best." He made no move to take it, though his body screamed for the relief it would provide. "What do you want?" "A small modification to the demonstration parameters." She placed the vial on the workstation beside him, then withdrew a small data drive from her jacket. "This contains adjusted settings for the prototype's containment field. You'll upload it to the control system before the presentation." "That would destabilize the energy output," Gaheris protested, his scientific integrity momentarily overriding his addiction and fear. "It could create unpredictable resonance patterns throughout the building's infrastructure." "Yes," Morgan agreed calmly, "it would." The implication hung in the air between them. She wasn't asking him to sabotage the demonstration, she was ordering it. "I can't," he said, though the resolve in his voice was weak. "People could be hurt." "People are already being hurt, Dr. Wright." Morgan's tone hardened. "My brother's vision for this technology is limited, controlled, incremental. He wants to maintain the status quo while appearing progressive. But power like this," she gestured to the prototype, "doesn't belong in cautious hands. It demands transformation, not accommodation." She placed the data drive beside the vial of Avalon. "The choice is simple. Make this small adjustment, and you'll receive enough Avalon to manage your dependency for 6 months, plus complete debt forgiveness. Refuse, and by noon today, Arthur will receive comprehensive documentation of your arrangement with Mordred, including every piece of confidential information you've provided." Gaheris felt the walls closing in, options diminishing. "Why?" he asked finally. "Why sabotage something that could help millions?" "I'm not sabotaging it," Morgan replied. "I'm liberating it." She checked her watch, an elegant timepiece that probably cost more than Gaheris earned in a month. "I have a board meeting to prepare for. You have 30 minutes to make your decision and implement the changes if you choose wisely." She moved toward the door, then paused. "One last thing. The modifications won't compromise the core technology, just the artificial limitations Arthur has placed on it. Think of it as removing a governor from an engine, its true power finally unleashed." After she left, Gaheris sank into his chair, staring at the vial of Avalon and the data drive beside it. His hands had begun to shake, the first sign of withdrawal setting in. Soon would come the cold sweats, the racing thoughts, the crushing anxiety that only the drug could alleviate. He picked up the vial, rolling it between his fingers, watching the amber liquid catch the laboratory lights. Then his gaze shifted to the Grail prototype with its gently pulsing core. For just a moment, perhaps a trick of his increasingly unstable perceptions, he thought he saw something in the crystalline depths. Not his own reflection this time, but an image of the city itself. CAMELOTROPOLIS spread out in miniature within the sangreal crystal, its buildings and streets and people all connected by flowing lines of energy. The vision vanished as quickly as it had appeared, leaving Gaheris alone with his impossible choice. The clock on the wall continued its remorseless advance toward 10 a.m., when Arthur Pendragon would present his miracle to the world, or when something else entirely would unfold beneath Excalibur Tower. The round table room had transformed from empty stillness to controlled chaos as the 10 a.m. presentation approached. Technical staff made final adjustments to the display systems, security personnel conducted last-minute sweeps, and Kay Stewart orchestrated it all with terse efficiency, issuing instructions through his earpiece while simultaneously reviewing presentation materials on his tablet. Arthur stood slightly apart, engaged in quiet conversation with Bedivere near the windows. From this position, he could observe the board members as they arrived. Leodegrance, jovial despite the early hour, clapping shoulders and telling too loud jokes. Bedford and Travers, already deep in serious discussion about quarterly projections. Pellinor, ancient and dignified, leaning heavily on his cane as he made his way to his designated seat. The Morgan faction arrived as a unit. Mark Cornwall, media magnate and Arthur's longtime adversary. Nentras Davis, whose pharmaceutical empire had suspicious connections to the synthetic drug trade. And former Mayor Lot MacGregor, whose corrupt administration had nearly bankrupted the city before Arthur's intervention. They took seats together on the far side of the table, their body language projecting unified opposition. Arthur's gaze shifted to the elevator as its doors opened to admit Lady Igraine Pendragon. Even at 72, his mother maintained a regal bearing that commanded attention without effort. Her silver hair was styled in a simple but elegant bob, her attire expensive but understated. She acknowledged Arthur with a slight nod before taking her seat, her expression revealing nothing of her thoughts or intentions. "We're still missing Morgan," Kay murmured, appearing at Arthur's side. "No surprise there. She likes to make an entrance." "And Garis?" Arthur asked. "On his way up with the prototype. Security reports he seems agitated." Arthur frowned. "Is he fit to present?" "He'll manage," Kay replied, though his tone lacked conviction. "We don't have alternatives at this stage." Before Arthur could respond, his phone vibrated with an incoming call, Lance's number. He was about to decline it when some instinct made him reconsider. "Excuse me," he told Kay, stepping away to take the call. "Lance, I'm about to begin a critical presentation." "Arthur, listen," Lance interrupted, his voice urgent. "I'm en route to Excalibur Tower with materials from Merlin, diagrams of your Grail project with warnings about catastrophic failure if activated at full capacity today." Arthur felt a chill despite the room's comfortable temperature. "Merlin had information about the Grail?" "Detailed technical specifications that match what Gwen says you've been developing. Arthur, he believed the technology could tear what he called the veil between worlds. His notes contain repeated warnings about today's date specifically." "That's impossible," Arthur murmured, though doubt had already begun to creep in. Merlin had always known things he shouldn't, seen patterns others missed. The project has been under highest security protocols. Nevertheless, he knew, and someone killed him to prevent this information from reaching you before the board meeting. Lance's voice turned grim. "I'm 8 minutes out. Wait for me before proceeding with any demonstration." Arthur glanced at the gathering board members, at Kay efficiently directing final preparations, at the digital display now showing the opening slides of the presentation. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned, the culmination of years of work and billions in investment. "Arthur?" Lance prompted. "Did you hear me?" "I heard you," Arthur replied quietly. 8 minutes. I'll stall." He ended the call and turned back toward the table, only to find his path blocked by Morgan, who had arrived silently during his conversation. "Brother," she greeted him, her smile perfectly calibrated to appear cordial to observers while conveying deeper currents of animosity to its recipient. "Such an important day for your legacy. I wouldn't have missed it." Arthur met her gaze steadily. "Morgan, I'm glad you could attend." "We both know that's not true," she lowered her voice. "But then we both traffic in necessary fictions, don't we? You with your public persona of the benevolent corporate savior, me with my reputation as the ruthless alternative." She studied his face. "You look unwell, Arthur, the burden of transformation weighing heavily?" Before he could respond, Kay approached with an apologetic expression. "Mr. Pendragon, Dr. Wright has arrived with the prototype. The board is assembled and waiting." Morgan stepped back, her smile widening. "Don't let me delay your moment of triumph." She moved toward her seat on the opposite side of the table, beside Lot MacGregor, who greeted her with conspiratorial familiarity. Arthur made a swift decision. "Kay, I need 10 minutes before we begin. A last-minute development requires my attention." Kay's expression tightened with concern. "The board is expecting." 10 minutes, Arthur repeated firmly. "Offer refreshments, distribute the preliminary materials. I'll be back shortly." Before Kay could object further, Arthur strode toward the private elevator, his mind racing. If Merlin had indeed possessed detailed knowledge of the Grail project, knowledge that someone had killed to suppress, then the implications were staggering. The professor's apparent madness had always contained threads of uncanny insight, glimpses of connections others couldn't see. "The king and the land are one," Merlin had told him once, during a rare lucid moment. "What flows through you flows through the city. When one sickens, so does the other." Arthur had dismissed it as metaphorical rambling. Now, with his health mysteriously deteriorating while the city experienced increasing infrastructure failures, with the Grail technology behaving in ways that defied scientific explanation, with Merlin murdered on the eve of the project's unveiling, The coincidences were becoming harder to ignore. The elevator doors opened onto the laboratory level, where Arthur found Gaheris Wright alone, making final adjustments to the prototype. The scientist jumped at Arthur's entrance, his nervous movement sending a small vial rolling across the workstation. Arthur caught it before it could fall to the floor, noting the amber liquid inside, unmistakably Avalon, the designer drug that had become Merlin's substance of choice in his final years. "Mr. Pendragon," Gaheris stammered, his face pale beneath a sheen of perspiration. "I was just completing the calibration sequence." Arthur held up the vial. "Explain this." Gaheris seemed to deflate, shoulders slumping in defeat. I haven't been," he drew a shaky breath. "I've been compromised, sir." "By whom?" Before Gaheris could answer, a subtle vibration passed through the floor beneath them. Not quite a tremor, but a strange harmonic resonance that seemed to emanate from the prototype itself. The crystal at its core pulsed with increased intensity, its inner light shifting through colors not quite definable by the human eye. "What's happening?" Arthur demanded, moving closer to the device. "It's responding to proximity," Gaheris explained, professional interest temporarily overriding his distress. "Your proximity, specifically. We've observed this phenomenon consistently. The technology becomes more active in your presence. It's one of the unexplainable effects I've been documenting." Arthur stared at the crystal core, watching as patterns formed and dissolved within its depths, like a kaleidoscope operating in dimensions beyond normal perception. "And you have no scientific explanation for this behavior?" "None that conforms to established physics." Gaheris hesitated, then added, "But I have a theory that extends beyond conventional science. The crystal, what you've called Sang,